Welcome to another class for carbon and its compounds. In our last class, we talked about how carbon, by sharing its 4 valence electron, produces 4 covalent bond and thus gain its stable octet. As it has 4 valence electron, carbon could not give up its 4 electron due to large amount of energy and cannot gain 4 electron, as that will lead to the 10 numbers of electron, which is too much for 6 protons to attract. That's why the sharing of electron was the only pathway for through which carbon could make bonds. That's why most of the carbon compounds are covalent in nature. The organic hydrocarbons are covalent in nature. Before going into those detailed study, let's see how many numbers of covalent bonds are there. The first one is single bond. Now, single bonds are formed when one electron is being shared from one species or one atom with the another electron that is coming from another species or another atom. Let's see how. Let's take example of fluorine molecule. In fluorine molecule, there are 2 fluorine atoms, each comprising 7 numbers of electron in between them. Both the fluorine, by sharing one electron, is forming a covalent bond. Thus, each of them are gaining their octet, and hence a single covalent bond is formed between the two fluorine atom, forming the fluorine molecule. Let's take another example. Chlorine molecule. Similar to fluorine molecule, chlorine molecule also comprises 7 valence electron. Another chlorine molecule having 7 electron is also sharing its one of the electron, and thus both is gaining their octet. And thus forming chlorine-chlorine single bond, and through this single bond they are forming the chlorine molecule. Let's take another example. Hydrogen gas. Hydrogen is a diatomic molecule. It comprises 2 hydrogen atoms, each having 1 electron in its valence shell. Both of the hydrogen atom is sharing their only 1 electron, and thus forming, gaining their doublet and thus forming the single bond. This is how hydrogen is forming a single bond via a covalent sharing, and this is the example of single bond formation. Therefore, single bond are formed when atoms are sharing one electron with the another electron coming from another atom and thus forming a single bond. Now, there is another type of covalent bond that exists, which is known as double bond. Now, to study the double bond, we need to take example of an molecule, that is oxygen, O2 molecule. Now, double bonds are formed when instead of sharing one electron, atoms share two electrons from each other and thus forming a two covalent bond. Oxygen is diatomic molecule having 6 valence electron. Thus, oxygen is both the oxygen is gaining their octet filled up and thus forming a double bond between them, and two lone pair remains on each of the oxygen atom. Thus the double bond are formed. Let's take example of another molecule, which is carbon dioxide. Now, the central atom of carbon dioxide is carbon. Carbon have 4 valence electron. Both these 4 valence electrons are shared between the two oxygen atom, and each oxygen carbon has the shared 2 valence electron to the each oxygen atom. Oxygen on the other hand contains 6 valence electron. It is sharing 2 electron each, and thus is completing its octet. Therefore, forming two double bond, carbon forming two double bond, and each oxygen is having two lone pair of electron on them. This is the structure of the carbon dioxide, which comprises two double bond on the central atom carbon. So, double bonds are formed when atom shared two electron instead of one electron. The last type of covalent bond is known as triple bond. Triple bonds are formed like double bond when atoms share 3 electrons. Let's take an example to understand this sharing. Let's take example of nitrogen. Nitrogen is a diatomic molecule. Nitrogen have 5 valence electron. Each nitrogen atom in the diatomic molecule nitrogen share 3 electron with the another nitrogen and thus complete its octet, forming a triple bond. So this is how double bond, triple bond and single bonds are formed depending on the species that are forming the covalent bond and how much numbers of electron they can share. Depending on these two factors, carbon will form single bond, in some compounds will form double bond, in some compounds will form triple bond in some compounds.